You're watching Beyond Markets. Welcome. I'm Kenneth Igbomo. On today's show, we'll discuss recommendations and solutions to Nigeria's power sector challenges. You can join the conversation with the hashtag Beyond Markets and follow my handle at Kenneth Igbomo. Earlier this year, a representative of the United States Power Africa Initiative said structure was the biggest challenge facing the power sector in Nigeria. In a recent roundtable on the power sector, PwC hosted stakeholders in the power value chain in Nigeria to get their recommendations for the problems holding back the sector. Pedro Omontuemhen, who is the energy industry leader for West Africa at PwC Nigeria, joins me for this discussion. First of all, I'd like you to help me understand from the roundtable.
Yes.
We know the issues, the plethora of issues plaguing the power system, power sector in Nigeria.
Yes.
First, I'd like you to first help me understand the problem.
Okay. Thanks very much for the invitation. The Nigerian power sector is quite an interesting one. And there are challenges across the whole value chain, whether from the generation to the transmission to the distribution. For the day-to-day user, the biggest problem they see is the distribution, because that's the interface. But we strongly believe that there are challenges across the entire value chain. Why the distribution is a big problem for the day-to-day user? Because those are the guys that come knocking on the door, collect your money, disconnect you when you don't pay. So those are the people you face. But those guys are really just the face of the value and not the only challenges you have. So clearly there are challenges across the value chain, and we can take time and discuss each of the challenges that we face across the value chain. Okay,
now let's look at the roundtable you had. Very interesting names I saw there. People who came to speak and talk about, engage and give their their input on the sector.
Yes.
I'd like you to just speak to some of the recommendations that came out of this roundtable.
Okay, clearly. One of the strong recommendations is that there needs to be regulatory certainty. Regulations need to be certain. Number two, there needs to be collaboration across all the players in the value chain. Number three, there needs to be bankability of projects. The projects that you need for the financiers to finance need to be bankable. Okay, so those are some of the regulations that came out, suggestions that came out of the roundtable.
Okay, but I guess, because as we've spoken to different players before,
yes.
If you sit in the Gencos in here, sit the Discos in here, bring in people who are into transmission and even the government side as well,
yes.
They will all tell you different problems that they have and all their challenges they are facing, and sometimes they all don't kind of agree on what is in there.
Yes.
How can we move from this?
Okay, so first we all need to work together. The entire players in the industry, the Gencos, the Discos, the transmission company, the government, the regulators all need to sit down together and come up with a plan that is sustainable. So one of the questions we asked at the roundtable yesterday was, when will Nigeria have 24/7 power, unfailing power? And it was interesting to see the response that each of the participants gave. Some gave the response, according to the government roadmap, it will be this. No, forget about the roadmap. What in reality do we need to do to ensure that we have 24 hours power in Nigeria without fail? And somebody said 20 years. If we do this, okay, so let's go back to the if, and then let's see how so what the players need to do is to agree on the roadmap, realistic roadmap, what you must do as Genco, what you must do as transmission company, what you must do as the Discos, and what you must do as the ultimate pair, so that we achieve that 24/7 power that we want.
So 24-hour electricity in Nigeria is still a myth?
Yes. At the moment, it will be between a 4-year plan according to the roadmap, or potentially 20 years, as somebody said, if. The big word is the if.
But would you say that over the years,
yes.
there have been no milestones or successes that have been recorded?
Oh, there have been tremendous progress. And the theme was working together, celebrating success. That was the theme. So we have recommended, observe progress in the... if you look at the Genco, for example, there's enough power that's available, in the power plants. Somebody talked about 12,000 megawatts available, but we know what you get in a distribution company is probably between 3,000 to 4,000 megawatts, depending on who you are listening to. So there's 12,000 available, but there's 3,000 to 4,000 distributed. So what happens between the 12 and the 4? Okay, there's a missing 8. So, and there are more power plants planning to come up. So potentially you can actually ramp up production from the 12 to 20,000 megawatts, but the challenge would not be the transmission of that and the distribution of that and the payment for that.
Okay. I want to take a few steps back
okay,
now. We all know about the privatization process that happened in there.
Yeah.
In hindsight now, would you look back and say we dotted our I's and crossed our T's on that one?
Whoosh, that's that's a tricky question. Privatization was good, but I'm not sure we got it right completely. In fact, I think one of the comments one of the participants mentioned yesterday was that a lot of the people who went particularly to the distribution companies thought that there was going to be another GSM, in which case, well, we don't want to miss out on this, let's go ahead and do it. When they got there, I think they found out there are things that were not as good as they thought it was. And therefore, I don't think any of the distribution companies, for example, have been able to meet their A, T, and C losses. They've not met it because the amount of money required to invest in the distribution company is just huge. Okay, so if you're talking about one of the biggest issues they have is collection losses. People get power and don't pay for it. People steal power. Big men, small men, they steal power. They don't pay for it. And if you don't pay for the power that is supplied to you, the distribution company will not have money to pay for the power that was willed to them. So it just goes back to the entire value chain. If the customer is not paying for the power, then these guys will not have money to pay for the power that was sold to them, and the power that was transmitted, and nobody. So there will be no money. So the challenge is that people are not paying for the power. A lot of people who are not metered. Those who are metered are bypassing meters. People are stealing power. That's a big issue.
Okay, let's look at one other side of the solution.
Yes.
Because I want us to focus on solution here.
Yes.
Mini-grid,
Yes.
off-grid solutions.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of IPPs come on board in past years. What's the potential of that, in helping us move closer to that, achieving that 24-hour electricity?
Oh, fantastic. I think, and I'm going to tie that to another issue that we discussed, the issue of mini-grid and off-grid power. If you see at the moment, most Nigerians, sorry to use the word, I tell you have mini-grids already because you have the generator in your house, you have the solar panels in your house, so you're already generating power. In fact, it's possible that you generate power and you can sell power to your neighbor, because you have more, so that you have a 30 kVA that you don't really need a 30 kVA. So you can actually begin to do that. So a lot of people already have so-called home grids, if I may use the word. Now, and they actually pay much more than they are paying for the national power, the electric power from the various discos. So why I want to tie that to the issue of cost of power, because people say, I don't want to pay so much. But if you're going to use your petrol or your diesel, you're already paying a lot. Okay, so if you put away your petrol generator and your diesel generator and just wait for the distribution company to supply you, the supply is reliable, you pay much less than what you're paying now, with less stress to your life. We run up and down to buy the diesel and all of that. So the mini grids, as they operate now, they are working because people are paying slightly more than they're paying for the national power, and the reliability is much, much higher. So it appears that people are willing to pay for reliable power. If the power is reliable, I'm happy to pay for it because it just removes the stress from my life.
Okay, then I'll also look at, still looking at solutions here. Yes. I'd like to speak to the renewables. We've seen a lot of very interesting offers out there regarding solar, regarding other forms of renewable energy.
Yeah.
How would you rate this, and where do you see us, ramping up on this front going in the next 10 years? Okay,
renewables provide an interesting alternative, but they also have their limitations. Clearly, so if you're going to look at solar power, for example, the good thing is that the cost of solar PVs have dropped significantly over the past few years, and the project is going to continue to drop. And of course, with increasing technology, maybe become more reliable, but there's a limit to what solar particularly can do. And therefore, it's not the only solution. It will be a mix of solutions. We're looking for different solutions to meet the energy requirement of the country. So solar is a good option, but it's not absolutely 100% reliable because of the rays and the reliability of sunlight.
Yeah. What would you say would be the ideal future energy mix in a Nigerian home?
Wow. So the option is to, so clearly Nigeria is a gas province. We have plenty of gas in Nigeria. So clearly the first option is to utilize our gas as much as possible. Because there's competition out there for the gas in the world. And the first thing will be to utilize your own gas for meet domestic demand. So my first option will be rely on gas as much as possible. Secondly, we've got hydropower in Nigeria, and clearly you also want to rely upon the hydro. So the Kanji Dam, the Shiroro Dam, the Mabila Dam, all of that you need to maximize that. A few other options which are not too environmentally friendly would be coal, for example. A lot of people are actually moving away from coal, but we still do have coal. And if we need to do that, that would be an option. So gas, water, a bit of coal, and of course solar power to add to the mix.
Taking it back to the gas,
Yes.
we see here the amount of gas we still flare as a country.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know innovative ways of getting people to, rather than flare this gas, get investors or companies who will give them at a premium to come and, you know, contain this gas, use the gas, but then we get advantages from them operating and doing business in Nigeria. Yeah.
So clearly, if you look at the 10 IPPs that started by Obasanjo, those were all gas-dependent plants. I've visited 2 or 3 of the gas plants. But the challenge you have in those gas plants that there were no gas pipelines, or the gas were not sufficient to fire those plants. So you've gone ahead to build power plants, but you've not secured your gas to the power plants. Now, the challenge with this gas was that you need to agree on appropriate pricing for the gas. Okay, so if you have a domestic gas price that is not as attractive as the foreign gas price, if I'm a gas producer, okay, my first option will be who will give me the best value for my money. And if the external market will give me the best value for my money, then I will take my gas outside of this country as against sell to you. So the pricing of gas has to be appropriate for you to sell gas locally. And so clearly, if the pricing is right, the investors will come in. They will, don't forget, there's also a time required to do the investment before you take the gas to this. So that timing is right. You need to have the enough investment and need to attract them, incentives for the gas investors so that they can invest and recoup their investment.
But when you look at gas, and you look at, you know, trying to harness gas and in there, first, 2 things come into my mind.
Yes.
One is the safety issue.
Yeah.
And then secondly, the security issue.
Yes.
You know, do you think we're advanced enough to address these two
absolutely
issues?
We've been in the oil and gas business now for close to 50 years as a country. So clearly we have the technology, the manpower to deal with it. And actually, I think gas will actually be safer than crude. I mean, anybody who goes near the gas pipeline will regret he ever did that. Whereas if you go through the crude pipeline now, you may be smiling. So clearly, I think we are advanced. We're already doing that. There's a West African gas pipeline, for example, that run all the way to Ghana. So clearly, we have the technology to handle gas in Nigeria.
If you're just joining us, I have with me Pedro Omontuemhen, who is the energy industry leader for West Africa at PwC Nigeria, and he's with me today, and we're discussing solutions to the power sector challenges in Nigeria. Let me bring back to some of the issues that we had discussed earlier, and I would like to take you on some of the issues that I still think still needs to be addressed. We alluded to a few of them earlier on, but then for me, it's the gap between the generation, transmission, and distribution.
Yes.
What really is playing out there?
Okay, so there are a lot of issues. So if you look at generation now, we said earlier on that there's enough generation going on at the moment. The numbers we have is 12,000 megawatts of power being generated. But all of that is not available to be transmitted and distributed. So if you speak to the transmission company, just one company in Nigeria for transmission, they'll tell you, okay, they are doing a lot over the past 2 or 3 years at the least, trying to ensure that those power is available for distribution. That sometimes they actually take power to the distribution company, and the distribution company says, look, we don't want shut down. So they actually ask the control center to shut down power, because if you take too much power, you just blow up the system. So it appears that the generation is generating, the transmission is able to transmit a lot of that, but the distribution company, because they don't have enough infrastructure and they've not invested enough in the facility to receive power, are not able to distribute all that we can produce at the moment. And that's why the intervention by the minister is quite important, because they have brought up what they call eligible customer, meaning that if you're a large manufacturer, a large consumer, you can actually directly go to the generating company and buy power directly. I think it requires a minimum of 2 megawatts. So if you're consuming at least 2 megawatts, you can go directly to one of the distribution companies, power generation companies, say, supply me power, and then through the high tension, they can actually directly supply. And some of those contracts are already in place. Okay, so they supply power directly to you, bypassing now the distribution company. That is one way to solve some of the problems.
But in your own assessment, how would you rate the infrastructure network across board?
It requires improvement. I think it's so clear. The network across board, from the transmission to the distribution, requires massive investment. I think the numbers are out. It's about 7.2 billion naira required to invest in the Nigerian power space. And I think by the meeting we had, we actually believe that you need much more than that to invest massively. Because if you compare Nigeria's current production with a country our size, or where we would like to get to as a country, you will require much more than 7.2 billion that we've talked about.
Okay, when you look at the tariff end,
yes,
would you say it's an efficiency problem why we're not getting the proper cost-reflective tariffs?
There are all kinds of issues. There are political issues involved in tariff setting. If you remember, President Goodluck, towards the days of his administration, there was an increase in price, and that was reversed almost immediately, because he thought it was not politically expedient to increase the price just before the elections. So, and if you talk to the distribution companies, they will tell you that the price is not cost-reflective, and therefore they are not profitable because they can't just sustain the operations because of the price that you're charging. And I think generally most Nigerians will agree that the cost of domestic electricity is much cheaper from the current suppliers compared to what you would do if you run your own power yourself. Okay, and that's why when we talk about the mini grids earlier on, that the mini grids are able to operate efficiently and profitably because they can price their power much higher than the what we currently have.
Yeah, but I would, okay, for someone, I'm speaking now as a consumer,
yes,
someone who's had experience.
Yes.
So I had an experience with overbilling.
Yes.
Estimated billing and all that. I would argue and tell you for a fact.
Yeah.
That if I put into account the amount I was being billed,
yes,
compared to running my own mini grid in my house with my gen and all that,
yes,
this is not too far ago. This was an incident that happened less than 4 or 5 months ago.
Yes,
I would tell you for a fact that it was even more cheaper for me,
yes,
to run my generator 24 hours,
yes,
than to pay that estimated billing that I was getting at the time.
I understand that, and I'd say maybe that is just a one-off incident. And if you do that over a period of time, if you were billed properly and appropriately, it is much cheaper for you to pay the bills than run your own generator. Now, one of the things that happen with the estimated billing is that the stations are allocated power, and I think this is the horrible truth. They are allocated power, and then that power needs to be paid for. So there are people in your neighborhood, for example, who are stealing power. So I'll be looking at maybe 1 megawatt and say, this is the price for that 1 megawatt. You need to call station manager, you need to collect the value of 1 megawatt from this area. Okay? And I discovered, oh my God, at the end of the year, I've sold power, but where would I get money from? So I need to allocate that 1 megawatt to the people who can pay. Now, there are people, for example, like I said, they bypass meters, in which case the guy has a factory in his backyard, okay, but when you look at the house, it looks like a 2-bedroom flat. So you think, oh, this 2-bedroom flat, the man should not be paying more than 2,000 naira. But anytime you see the power this guy is consuming, where is it coming from? So someone needs to pay for the power that is being stolen somewhere. Okay,
but I think this is actually a symptom.
Yes.
When you look at the root cause of it, it comes from metering issues.
Absolutely.
Because why I was getting those estimated bills was because I'd applied for meter for over 2 years.
Yes.
I finally got the meter, but it took me, this was a 2-year journey.
Yeah.
When you look at the metering issues and, solving some of this, can there be more expedient?
Okay, so metering is another challenge, which again, the regulation is not out. So we now have meter asset providers who will help to provide finance meters, because financing was a big challenge with the distribution companies. They didn't have enough money to invest in the metering exercise. So the regulation is now for third party to help in financing meters. So a lot of the distribution companies are actually in the process of now engaging with meter asset providers to finance meters across the nation. And I believe that once you're metered, then there's a bit of certainty. Now the challenge I would now have is, will you bypass the meters? This is now for the distribution companies to measure, to ensure that there's no power theft, as we call it. And just to add to the issue we talk about, the state governments and the federal government need to put a power theft law in place. So if you steal power, we treat you as a robber and deal with you appropriately.
Okay. But I think it's still, like I said, symptoms in there. Metering issues is one on the other end.
Yes.
Then I honestly don't believe that we have a proper tally or enumeration of all the customers that they service?
The enumeration of customers is also ongoing as we speak. Again, I spoke to some of the distribution companies and they tell me that process is ongoing. So they're enumerating customers, they are checking out who you are, what you have, the size of your property, what you have in your place, so that they can ensure that you are properly classified. Don't forget that there are different classes for customers. So you have to be properly categorized so that you can get your appropriate metering and then you are billed appropriately.
Okay, now let's look at investment into the sector.
Yes.
We understand that with every problem, there's an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And so I'm sure there's some investors sitting on the side and saying, you know what, why can't Nigeria get, why is Nigeria doing 7,000 megawatts?
Yes. What can we do more?
We can do about 40,000.
Absolutely.
So for people who want to come and invest in the probably set up greenfield, investments and projects here and there, what's holding that back? Okay.
So I can tell you, I mean, that one of the conclusions was that the next set of billionaires in this country will come from the power sector. The next set of billionaires. And in fact, yesterday I was tempted to remove my tie and immediately go to the field. And so the next set of billionaires will come from the power sector because there's huge opportunities.
Why do you say so?
Okay, because with every challenge, there's an opportunity, depending on where you're looking at. If you look at the opportunity, it's huge. I give an example. Most of the big factories in Nigeria have been disconnected from the national grid years ago. They run their own factories. They run their own power plants, most of them. That is not their business. It's not the business of Nigerian breweries or Henneke or whatever to run power plant. That's not their business is to do whatever they're meant to do. So they are waiting for people who will take this responsibility off their hands. So for example, you go to an industrial area and you set up a mini grid in an industrial area. You say, guys, you don't need to run your generators anymore. I will supply you power. They are willing, and at a price lower than what you're currently doing. They were willing to pay for it. Right now, the government is doing what they call attacking the markets, area markets, this market and that market. And say, guys, for years you've been in darkness. Someone in this area will supply you, set up a mini grid, supply this market, and ensure that you have power for 24/7. The guys will be happy to trade with their generators and come to it because it will be much better, to be cheaper for them, less noise, less pollution. So there are opportunities to be made in these just set up the mini grids. 2-3 years ago, we had that session. That was another solution. Let's not wait for the national big structure. Let's regionalize. Let's break it up so that we have enough people, enough businesses supplying and ensuring that those guys are serviced, all of the various sectors.
Okay, but we've had quite a number of IPP projects that have been on board. I know one particular that I've been tracking for quite a while now.
Yes.
The Azura Edo IPP.
Yes, that's ongoing.
Yeah. But it seems like it's taking almost forever to get it going.
Yes, so it takes time to get financial close. It takes time to, the good thing about the press that the day I just signed the contract, you start shouting about the IPP. I've not even contracted my people to construct the plant. I've not bought the land, but because I'm actually just thinking of it, people start counting this. So it takes time to set up these things.
So what would you say is the ideal life cycle from closing the deal to actually getting those megawatts pumping?
Depends on the size of your plant. Depends on what stage you were in before you came to the press. Okay, so if you have not even, you're just discussing with your bank and then you're announcing it, then you are going to wait a long time. Some guys are more meticulous. They will have done their homework before they come to the press, and therefore in 2 years they are up and running. But it also depends on whether you have the money or not. Some people have gone to the press or announced and they don't have the money. So it all depends. You cannot. I can't sit here and say this how much what it takes. It all depends on where you are in your cycle.
Okay, I've seen the work, very remarkable work. Development finance institutions have been doing around de-risking some of these projects and getting them on board. Yeah. Are we exploring that option enough?
Absolutely. What will make projects bankable is what will attract the financial institutions. So what we're doing, particularly with the IPPs, once you have a ready market and you have your contract in place, that become attractive to the financial institutions. Don't forget, financial institutions are holding your money, they're holding my money, they don't want to just throw away the money. So your project have to be bankable. You have to tick their boxes. You have to be able to tick the boxes to say you've met all of the, you have a demand in place, you have the source of supply, the money will come in, and they can see the money, then they will finance the project. I think they are willing and happy to finance. Most of the IPPs, they have, the financing is ongoing because they can see where the cash, they can see the cash flow. But sometimes it's the big, gigantic project where it's done more for the social and political good than for economic reality that don't get easily financed.
And that was Pedro Omontuemhen, who is the energy industry leader for West Africa at PwC Nigeria. And that's it on Beyond Markets for today. Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can watch all previous episodes of Beyond Markets on our website at cnbcafrica.com and stay engaged with the hashtag Beyond Markets and follow me at Kenneth Igbomo. Do have a wonderful day.